The call came during my morning coffee ritual at Riverside Cafe, the same ritual Aunt Margaret had mocked countless times as wasting money better spent on a real career. My hands trembled as I listened to my cousin Camila's voice crack through the speaker. "Mia, it's bad. The doctors say she needs specialized treatment and insurance won't cover most of it. I'm Mia, a graphic artist in a small town where creativity is often mistaken for laziness, especially by my Aunt Margaret." The irony of this call wasn't lost on me. Just last week, at my cousin's engagement party, Aunt Margaret had made sure everyone heard her opinions about my life choices. "Look at her, sitting there with her little drawings," she'd announced to the room, wine glass swaying dangerously in her hand. "June, I don't understand how you let her waste her potential like this. A proper job, that's what she needs." My mother had simply looked away, her silence more cutting than any words could be. "Mia, are you still there?" Camila's voice pulled me back to the present. "Yeah, sorry. How much does she need?" The number Camilla quoted made my coffee go cold in my throat. That was more than I made in 6 months. "We're having a family meeting tonight," Camilla continued. "Maybe if we all pitch in—" "I'll be there," I said, already knowing how it would go. The meeting was exactly as I'd expected. Chaos wrapped in forced politeness at my mother's house. Aunt Margaret sat in her usual armchair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, but her tongue hadn't lost its edge. "Well, if some people had chosen more reliable professions," she said, eyeing me pointedly, "we might have more resources as a family." My friend Rose, who'd come for moral support, squeezed my hand under the table. She knew how much those barbs hurt, even after all these years. "Margaret," my mother finally spoke up, "this isn't helping." "No, what's not helping is having a niece who thinks doodling is a career," Margaret's voice rose. "Did you know she turned down that accounting position I arranged? And now look, I'm updating my will, and guess who won't be in it?" The room fell silent. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air." Outside, Rose followed me to the porch swing. "You okay?" "You know what's funny?" I said, watching my breath cloud in the cold air. "My latest commission just sold for $5,000, but in there, I'm still just the family disappointment." "Mia," Rose started, but my phone buzzed. A text from Micah, my artist friend. "Got that gallery showing you wanted. Call me." I should have felt excited, but all I could think about was Aunt Margaret's pale face and the stack of medical bills on the coffee table inside. "She's really sick, isn't she?" I asked Rose. "Stage 3. They caught it late because she was too proud to get checked earlier." Pride. That was Aunt Margaret's everything. The same pride that made her refuse to acknowledge my art in the local paper, or the mural I painted for the children's hospital. The door opened, and Camila stepped out, her eyes red. "The lawyer's here with the will papers. She wants to make it official tonight." "Of course she does," I muttered. Back inside, Margaret's lawyer, Serena, was laying out documents. My aunt's hand shook as she signed, but her voice was steady as she announced, "I want it clear that my estate will be divided between Camila and June. Mia has chosen her path, and it's not one I will support." I watched her sign away my existence on paper, and something shifted inside me. Not pain, I was used to that, but something else. A plan started forming, one that would either break me financially or prove something I'd been trying to show my aunt for years. As everyone filed out later, I overheard Margaret talking to my mother. "The treatments start next week. I don't know how we'll manage, but I won't accept charity. I have my dignity." I smiled to myself, pulling out my phone to check my bank balance. Dignity was about to meet its match in karma, and I was going to be the one dealing the cards. "Everything okay?" Rose asked, catching my expression. "Yeah," I said, watching Aunt Margaret being helped to her car. "I just need to make some calls tomorrow. About that inheritance she's so proud of. I think it's time to show her what her useless niece can really do." I didn't know then that my decision that night would set off a chain of events that would either heal our family or shatter it completely. But standing there, watching Margaret's car disappear into the darkness, I knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served with an anonymous check and a side of karmic justice. The next morning, I sat in my tiny home office, staring at my laptop screen. My savings account balance glared back at me, the result of 3 years of careful planning for my own design studio. My phone buzzed with a text from Rose. "Have you thought this through? It's a lot of money." I called her instead of texting back. "I've run the numbers. If I take on extra freelance work and dip into my studio fund, I can make it work." "Mia, that's your dream we're talking about. And for what? Someone who's never believed in you?" Before I could answer, another call came in. Camila. "Hold on, Rose." "Mia?" Camila's voice was thick with tears. "The hospital called. They need the first payment by Friday, or they'll have to postpone her treatment." My stomach clenched. "How much?" 20,000. Mom's trying to get a loan, but with her credit. She trailed off. "I'll call you back," I said, switching back to Rose. "Still there?" "You're going to do it, aren't you?" I pulled up my banking app. "You should have seen her face last night, Rose. All that pride, and now she can't even afford to save her own life. And you think secretly paying for her treatment will what? Make her finally appreciate you?" "No," I said, starting the transfer process. "But maybe it'll teach her something about judging people's worth." After hanging up, I walked to my local coffee shop where Micah was waiting. His eyes widened as I approached. "You look like you haven't slept." "Thanks for the compliment," I said, sliding into the booth. "Tell me about the gallery showing." 3 months from now. Prime spot, great exposure, but..." He studied my face. "Something's wrong." I stirred my coffee absently. "I might have to pass." "Pass? Mia, this is your big break. The kind of opportunity that..." "I know." Several heads turned our way and I lowered my voice. "I know, but something came up." "Does this have something to do with your aunt? Camila told me about the will." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a notification. The transfer had gone through. $20,000, sent anonymously through my lawyer to the hospital's billing department. "Mia?" Micah waved his hand in front of my face. "You're scaring me." "I'm fine. Just taking care of something important." That evening, I was working on a commission when Camilla called again. "It's crazy," she said. "Someone paid for Aunt Margaret's first round of treatment. Anonymous donation." I forced my voice to stay neutral. "Really? That's unexpected?" "She's furious. Keeps saying she doesn't want charity. Mom's trying to convince her to accept it, but you know how she is." I did know. I also knew exactly what would happen next. Sure enough, the family meeting that night was explosive. I arrived to find Aunt Margaret holding court in her usual spot, face flushed with anger. "It's humiliating," she declared. "Some stranger thinking they can just..." "Margaret," my mother interrupted. "This is a blessing. Why can't you just accept it?" "Because I have my pride, unlike some people who probably live off handouts." Her eyes found me. "Speaking of which, Mia, how's the art business?" I met her gaze steadily. "Just finished a corporate project, but you probably wouldn't be interested." "See?" She turned to my mother. "That attitude. That's why she's not in the will. No respect for real work." Rose, who'd arrived late, caught my eye from across the room. She could probably see the irony written all over my face. Later, as I helped clean up, Camilla cornered me in the kitchen. "There's something different about you tonight. Usually, Aunt Margaret's comments get to you more." I shrugged, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "Maybe I'm growing up. Or maybe you know something about that mysterious donation." I dropped a fork, the clatter loud in the sudden silence. "What makes you say that?" "Just... you seem calm. Too calm." Before she could press further, Rose appeared in the doorway. "Mia, your phone's been buzzing. It's Micah about the gallery." I escaped to the porch, grateful for the rescue. But as I listened to Micah detail the opportunity I was about to give up, I heard Aunt Margaret's voice drift through the open window. "I've hired someone," she was saying. "A private investigator. I want to know who's behind this charity. No one makes a fool of Margaret Ross." I ended the call with Micah and leaned against the porch railing, watching the stars. My bank account was significantly lighter, my dream studio was slipping away, and now my aunt was actively hunting for my identity. But somehow, watching her rage against anonymous kindness felt like its own kind of victory. Rose joined me outside. "You know this is going to get complicated, right?" I nodded, thinking of the next payment I'd need to make in 2 weeks. Sometimes the most expensive revenge is the one that looks like kindness. 2 weeks into my secret mission, I found myself pulling double shifts at my desk, coffee cups multiplying around my workspace like mushrooms. A new corporate client had demanded 3 complete revisions of their logo, each paying less than the last. But I needed every penny. My phone lit up with a message from Micah. "Coffee? You've been MIA for days." I met him at our usual spot, trying not to wince at the $5 I spent on a latte, money that should have gone to Aunt Margaret's next treatment payment. "You look terrible," he said, sliding into the seat across from me, charming as always. "I'm serious. You're working yourself to death, and you still haven't given me a straight answer about the gallery showing." I stared into my coffee. "I can't commit right now, the entry fee alone." "Since when do you worry about money? Your business was doing great." Before I could answer, Camila walked in. She spotted us and made her way over, uninvited. "Guess what?" she said, pulling up a chair. "The anonymous donor struck again. Another payment cleared yesterday." My hands tightened around my cup. "How's Aunt Margaret taking it?" "Oh, she's livid. That investigator she hired? He's been asking questions all over town. But get this, the money's being routed through some complicated trust fund setup. He can't trace it." I tried to hide my smile. My lawyer had earned her fee with that arrangement. "Speaking of money," Camila continued, "Mom says you turned down 3 family dinner invitations this week. Are you avoiding us?" "Just busy with work," I said, pulling out my phone as another client email arrived. "Speaking of which..." "Always running away," she muttered. "Just like Aunt Margaret says." I froze halfway out of my seat. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just... She might have a point about responsibility. While someone's helping us with the medical bills, the rest of us are still trying to support her. Where are you in all this? Micah jumped in before I could respond. "Hey, Mia's working harder than anyone I know." "Right, on her little drawings." I left without answering, my coffee barely touched. Outside, Micah caught up with me. "Don't let them get to you," he said. "They don't understand what you do." "It's fine. I need to get back to work anyway." That evening, I was knee-deep in design work when Rose called. "Emergency family meeting at your mom's. Aunt Margaret's investigator found something." My heart stopped. "What kind of something?" "Don't know, but she sounds excited. You coming?" I arrived to find everyone already gathered. Aunt Margaret sat in her usual chair, looking smug despite her illness-worn features. A man in a crisp suit stood beside her, the investigator, I assumed. "Ah, Mia," Aunt Margaret said. "So nice of you to grace us with your presence. Mr. Ortiz here has some interesting information about our mysterious benefactor." The investigator cleared his throat. "The funds are coming from a local source, someone with considerable savings, recently depleted. We've narrowed it down to..." My phone rang, cutting him off. The client with the logo revisions. I stepped into the kitchen to take the call. "What do you mean you're going with another designer?" I fought to keep my voice down. "We had a contract." When I returned to the living room, everyone was staring at me. "Problem?" Aunt Margaret asked sweetly. "Just work stuff. What did I miss?" Mr. Ortiz was explaining how our donor seems to be struggling financially themselves, taking on extra work, making suspicious transfers. Her eyes narrowed. "Rather like someone else we know." I met her gaze steadily. "Sounds like they're working hard, unlike some people who just judge others' careers." The room went silent. Even the investigator looked uncomfortable. "How dare you?" Aunt Margaret started to rise, but weakness forced her back down. After everything? After everything what? After years of belittling me? After cutting me out of your will? Yeah, I dare." I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, but I kept walking. Outside, I leaned against my car, breathing hard. My phone buzzed, another client cancellation. At this rate, I'd have to dip even deeper into my studio fund for the next payment. Rose followed me out. That was quite a show. "Did you see her face?" so desperate to catch someone helping her that she can't even see what's right in front of her. Mia. Rose hesitated. The investigator might be closer than you think. Maybe it's time to stop. I shook my head, watching through the window as Aunt Margaret gesticulated angrily at the investigator. No, she needs to learn. Besides, I'm in too deep now. And your studio? Your dreams? I pulled out my phone, looking at my dwindling bank balance. Sometimes revenge costs more than money. As if on cue, a text from Camila appeared. The investigator's requesting bank records next. Aunt Margaret's determined to expose whoever it is. I smiled grimly. Let her try, I whispered, starting my car. Let her try. The investigator, Hamza, cornered me outside my favorite coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. I'd just finished my third consecutive all-nighter, trying to make up for lost clients with new commissions. Ms. Mia, he said, appearing beside me as I fumbled for my keys. Do you have a moment? I studied his carefully neutral expression. Depends. Are you here as Aunt Margaret's bloodhound or as a paying client? I find it interesting, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken, that your aunt's medical bills are being paid by someone whose financial patterns mirror yours exactly. Really? Maybe they're just another hardworking person being judged by people who don't understand their choices. Or maybe they're draining their life savings for someone who doesn't appreciate it. I felt the color drain from my face. Before I could respond, Micah's voice cut through the tension. Mia, there you are. He jogged up, placing himself between me and Hamza. We're late for that meeting. Hamza handed me his card. When you're ready to talk, call me. Inside my car, Micah turned to me. Want to tell me what's going on? And don't say nothing. You look like you've seen a ghost. I need coffee, I muttered, starting the engine. At a different cafe across town, I finally told him everything. The payments, the depleted savings, the gallery showing I'd had to pass up. Are you insane? He exploded, causing several heads to turn. That's your entire studio fund. Lower your voice, I hissed. No, I won't. Do you know how long you've worked for that dream? And you're throwing it away on someone who... Who what? Who's dying? Who needs help? Who never gave a damn about your dreams? My phone buzzed. Camila again. Aunt Margaret's in the hospital. Bad reaction to the treatment. She's asking for everyone. At the hospital, I found my mother in the waiting room, looking exhausted. She's stabilized, she said before I could ask. But she's different. Scared, I think. Inside the room, Aunt Margaret looked small against the white sheets, her eyes fixed on me as I entered. Come to see the show? Her voice was weak, but still carried that familiar edge. Your cousin tells me you've been too busy with work to visit lately. Finally finding a real job? Margaret, my mother warned. No, let her speak, I said, moving closer to the bed. Tell me, Aunt Margaret, what exactly is a real job to you? One that makes money? Because I make plenty. One that helps people? My designs are in children's hospitals. One that doesn't rely on handouts, she snapped, then started coughing. I handed her a water cup, my hand shaking. Like anonymous donations? Her eyes narrowed. Mr. Ortiz is close to finding out who's behind those. Then we'll see who's really... The monitor beside her bed started beeping rapidly. A nurse rushed in, ushering us out. In the hallway, I ran into Hamza again. Persistent, aren't you? I said. I'm good at my job, just like you're good at yours. He paused. The next payment is due tomorrow. Is that a question? An observation, along with the fact that you've been taking on small jobs at half your usual rate, desperate for quick cash, perhaps. Before I could respond, Rose appeared, pulling me aside. Your mother's looking for you. Also, Micah called. Said something about a solution for the studio fund? I shook my head. Tell him to drop it. Mia, you can't keep doing this. Look at yourself. When's the last time you slept? I'm fine. No, you're not. And neither is your business. Camila mentioned you lost the Thompson account. I leaned against the wall, suddenly dizzy. They wanted someone more corporate. You mean someone who wasn't working through the night on rush jobs to make quick cash? The hospital lights seemed too bright, the corridor too narrow. I should check on Aunt Margaret. She's sleeping, my mother said, joining us. The nurse gave her something. But Mia, honey, you look terrible. When's the last time you ate? I waved off her concern, but as I turned to leave, the corridor tilted. Rose caught my arm. That's it, she said. I'm taking you home. In my apartment, I finally checked my bank balance. The next payment would leave me with barely enough for rent. My phone lit up with a text from Hamza. Your aunt's determination to find her benefactor is affecting her health. Perhaps it's time to end this game? I stared at the message until the screen went dark. On my desk, the gallery invitation sat unopened, mocking me with its promises of the future I was sacrificing. Another text arrived, this time from Micah. Found an investor for your studio. Real opportunity. Don't throw away your dreams for someone else's pride. I looked at my reflection in the window. Pale, exhausted, running on coffee and determination. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to stop. Then my phone rang again. Camila's number. Mia? She's asking for you, and she's got that investigator with her. I found Aunt Margaret sitting up in her hospital bed, looking more alert than she had in days. Hamza stood by the window, his expression unreadable. Camila hovered near the door, wringing her hands. Close the door, Aunt Margaret commanded. I stepped inside, letting it click shut behind me. You wanted to see me? Mr. Ortiz has been sharing some fascinating information. She gestured to a chair. Sit. I prefer to stand. Always defiant, she muttered. Mr. Ortiz, please tell my niece what you've discovered. Hamza cleared his throat. The anonymous donations are coming from someone who's recently liquidated several investments. Someone who's been taking on numerous small design projects at reduced rates. Someone who... If you have something to say, I interrupted, say it directly. Aunt Margaret's monitor beeped steadily in the silence that followed. Finally, she spoke. Are you behind these donations? Would it matter if I was? Answer the question. Like you answered my calls when I won that national design competition, or when I landed my first major client. My voice shook. Or maybe like you answered when I begged you to look at my portfolio before deciding I was worthless. Camilla gasped softly from her corner. Aunt Margaret's face flushed. So it is you, she said. You're the one making me look like a charity case. The door opened and Rose burst in. Mia, don't... No, I cut her off. Let's have this out. I turned back to Aunt Margaret. You want to know the truth? Yes, I'm the one paying your medical bills. I'm the one working myself to exhaustion, taking every job I can find. I'm the one who gave up my dream of opening my own studio so you could have the best treatment available. The monitor's beeping increased. Hamza stepped forward, concerned. Why? Aunt Margaret whispered. To humiliate me? Because despite everything, you're family. And because maybe, just maybe, it would show you that the niece you dismissed as worthless could do something meaningful. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Is everything okay in here? Her heart rate is elevated. We're fine, Aunt Margaret snapped. Leave us. The nurse hesitated, then withdrew. Camila took her place by the door, looking ready to call for help if needed. So, Aunt Margaret said, her voice dangerously quiet, you thought you'd teach me a lesson? Play God with my life? No, Do you know what this means? She continued. Every treatment, every moment of hope was built on lies, on your need to prove something. That's not fair, Rose interjected. Mia has sacrificed everything to help you. Help me? Aunt Margaret laughed bitterly. She's helped herself to a grand gesture, nothing more. Well, I won't accept another penny. I'd rather die with dignity than live on her charity. The room spun slightly. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. Margaret, Hamza spoke up, perhaps we should consider... Consider what? That my worthless niece has been playing puppet master? That she's probably laughing at me behind my back? I never laughed, I said quietly. I cried. Every time I had to turn down an opportunity. Every time I stayed up all night working on cheap projects to make the payments. Every time I heard you mock my career while I was literally keeping you alive. Silence fell. Even the monitor seemed quieter. Get out, Aunt Margaret finally said. All of you, except Mr. Ortiz. In the hallway, Camila caught my arm. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have kept it secret? She looked away. I don't know. My phone buzzed. Micah again. Investor meeting tomorrow. Last chance. Don't throw this away. Rose read the message over my shoulder. Take it. You've done enough. Have I? I watched through the window as Aunt Margaret gestured angrily at Hamza. Look at her. Still so angry, so sure she's right. That's her problem, not yours, Rose said. You've proved your point. Have I? I repeated. Because it feels like I've just proved hers, that I'm exactly what she always said, someone who makes the wrong choices. Camila touched my shoulder. She's asking for Mom, and she's telling Hamza to stop the investigation. Why? She says there's no point now. The damage is done. I slumped against the wall, exhaustion finally hitting me full force. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from my bank. Account alert, balance below minimum. Rose took my phone gently. Come on, you need rest. As they led me away, I heard Aunt Margaret's voice through the door, talking to my mother who had just arrived. Did you know? Did you know your daughter was destroying herself to save me? I didn't stay to hear the answer. Sometimes I was learning, revenge doesn't taste like victory at all. Sometimes it just tastes like tears and cold coffee and dreams turning to dust. 3 days after the revelation, I sat across from Micah and his investor contact in a sleek downtown cafe. My hands wrapped around a coffee cup I couldn't afford, trying to hide their trembling. The space is perfect, Micah was saying. Corner location, great light, reasonable rent. The investor, a woman named Diana, nodded. And your portfolio is impressive. But I have concerns about your recent work history. These quick, low-budget projects. My phone lit up with Camila's name. I declined the call. Those were temporary, I started to explain, but my phone buzzed again. This time, a text. She's asking for you. It's important. I'm sorry, I said, standing. Family emergency. Diana's sympathetic smile didn't quite hide her disappointment. Perhaps we should reschedule when things are more settled. Outside, Micah caught up with me. That was your chance, Mia. Your last chance. I know. I fumbled with my car keys. But she's asking for me. She's always asking for something. When does anyone ask what you need? I didn't answer, just drove to the hospital in silence. Outside Aunt Margaret's room, I found my mother and Camila waiting. She's with her lawyer, my mother said. Serena's been here for an hour. Through the window, I could see Aunt Margaret signing papers, her hand shaking but determined. Finally, the door opened. Serena emerged, nodding to me. She's ready to see you. Inside, Aunt Margaret looked different. The anger that had fueled her for days seemed to have drained away, leaving something else in its place. Sit, she said, patting the bed beside her. When I hesitated, she added, please. I perched on the edge of the mattress. If this is about the payments, This is about the will. She held up a hand when I tried to interrupt. No, let me finish. Hamza showed me everything. The hours you've been working, the opportunities you've turned down, the studio fund you emptied. I didn't do it for the will. I know, that's what makes it worse. She picked at her blanket. You did it because you're better than me, better than I ever gave you credit for. The door opened and Rose slipped in, followed by Micah. They must have seen my car in the parking lot. I spoke with Diana, Micah said. She might reconsider if... Who's Diana? Aunt Margaret asked. No one, I said quickly, but Micah pressed on. An investor. She was going to fund Mia's studio. The dream you called worthless. Micah, don't, I pleaded. No, he's right, Aunt Margaret said. I should hear this. Tell me about the studio. So I did. The words poured out. The business plan I'd spent years developing, the clients I'd lined up, the space I'd found. With each detail, her expression grew more pained. And you gave all this up? For me? The treatments were more important. She reached for the papers Serena had left. I've changed my will again, but more importantly, I've made some arrangements. Serena helped me access some investments I'd forgotten about. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm paying you back. Every penny you spent on my treatments, plus enough to lease that studio space for a year. The room swam before my eyes. Rose grabbed my arm to steady me. I don't want your money, I said. Too bad. Consider it my first investment in your business. She smiled weakly. Unless you think I'm not qualified to judge a real career? A laugh bubbled up, half sob. Using my own words against me? Learning from the best. She patted my hand. I was wrong about you, Mia. Wrong about everything. Micah stepped forward. I'll call Diana. Wait, I said. Aunt Margaret, are you sure? The treatments are working. Thanks to you, I got them in time. Now it's your turn. She looked around the room, at Rose and Micah hovering protectively, at my mother and Camila who had quietly entered. I've spent years tearing you down. Let me help build something for once. My phone buzzed. Diana's number. Aunt Margaret nodded at it. Answer. Put it on speaker. With shaking hands, I did. Diana's voice filled the room. Mia, I've been thinking about your proposal. So have I, Aunt Margaret cut in smoothly. And I'd like to discuss co-investing in my niece's studio. I believe you'll find her recent work history shows exactly the kind of dedication and character you're looking for. I stared at her as she handled the call with the same authority she'd always wielded, but this time using it to build me up instead of tear me down. After the call ended, she handed me the will papers. Read them later. For now, don't you have a studio to plan? I don't know what to say. Say you'll prove me right this time instead of proving me wrong. She squeezed my hand. And Mia, thank you. Not for the money, but for showing me what real strength looks like. For the first time in months, I felt myself smile. Really smile. Sometimes it turns out revenge doesn't end in victory or defeat. Sometimes it ends in something that looks surprisingly like healing. 1 month later, I stood in an empty storefront, sunlight streaming through the large windows. Paint samples covered one wall, and architectural plans lay spread across a folding table. The exposed brick stays, Aunt Margaret declared from her wheelchair. She'd insisted on coming to the space inspection, despite having just finished another round of treatment. I thought you said I had creative control, I teased. Creative, yes. Foolish, no. She wheeled herself closer to the windows. These need cleaning, but the light is perfect for your work. The door chimed as Micah entered, carrying coffee for everyone. Diana just called. The paperwork's ready to sign tomorrow. Speaking of paperwork, Aunt Margaret said, pulling an envelope from her bag. There's something we need to discuss. I took the envelope, recognizing Serena's law firm logo. More changes to the will? No, something else. She nodded toward the papers. Read it. Inside was a partnership agreement. My hands started shaking as I read the terms. You want to be a formal partner in the studio? Silent partner, she corrected. With one condition. Here we go, I muttered, but I was smiling. The studio needs a name. I propose Legacy Design Studios. Micah nearly choked on his coffee. That's actually perfect. Because you're leaving me your legacy? I asked. Because you taught me what legacy really means. She wheeled closer. It's not about money or status, it's about impact. The mark we leave on others' lives. The door chimed again. Rose entered with Camila and my mother carrying lunch. How's it going? Rose asked, setting down the bags. Aunt Margaret's trying to make me cry again, I said, waving the partnership agreement. Good tears this time, I hope, my mother said, starting to unpack the food. The best kind. I turned back to Aunt Margaret. But are you sure about this? Partnership is a big commitment. So was paying for my treatment. She took a sandwich from Camila. Besides, someone needs to keep you from painting everything in those awful modern colors. I thought you didn't know anything about art, I challenged. I'm learning. Speaking of which... She pulled out her phone, showing me a local news article. Isn't this your mural they're featuring at the children's hospital? The others gathered around to look. It was the piece I'd done last year, the one she'd dismissed as doodling. They want to commission more, I admitted. I've been meaning to tell you. Tell me what? They want a piece for the oncology ward. I thought, maybe you could help me design it? The room went quiet. Aunt Margaret's eyes glistened. "I'd like that," she said softly. Camila cleared her throat. "Before everyone gets too emotional, there's something else." She handed me another envelope. From Hamza. "The investigator? What does he want now?" Inside was a simple note. "Sometimes the best investigations reveal more than just facts. They reveal truth. Thank you for teaching me that." "He's recommended me to 3 corporate clients," I explained to the questioning looks. "Said they needed someone who understands the value of investment in people." "Smart man," Aunt Margaret commented. "Now about these color schemes." "Oh no," Rose laughed. "Here we go again." We spent the next hour arguing good-naturedly about design choices, sharing lunch, and planning the future. My mother watched it all with tears in her eyes. "What?" I asked her during a quiet moment. "I just never thought I'd see this." She gestured between me and Aunt Margaret. "You two, building something together." "Neither did I," Aunt Margaret admitted. "But sometimes our biggest mistakes lead to our best opportunities." She wheeled over to the windows again, looking out at the street. "You know, I spent years thinking I knew what success looked like. I was wrong. Success isn't in the money or the status." "It's in the legacy?" I suggested. "It's in the love," she corrected. "Even when that love comes disguised as anonymous donations and midnight design work." Micah raised his coffee cup. "To Legacy Design Studios?" "To family," Aunt Margaret countered. "The kind you're born with and the kind you build." As everyone echoed the toast, I looked around the sun-filled space that would soon become my studio. Our studio. At Rose and Micah, who'd stood by me through everything. At Camila, who was finally seeing me as an equal. At my mother, who was learning to stand up for me. And at Aunt Margaret, who'd turned from my biggest critic to my strongest advocate. "One more thing," Aunt Margaret said, pulling out another paper. "The hospital board meeting is next week. They want to discuss the oncology ward mural. I took the liberty of scheduling us both to present the concept." "Us both? Unless you don't want your silent partner's input?" I hugged her, careful of the IV bruises on her arms. "I think we're way past silent." She hugged me back, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes, it's the courage to keep loving, keep giving, keep believing in someone until they learn to believe in you, too. The morning of Legacy Design Studios opening, I found Aunt Margaret already waiting outside, her wheelchair parked in front of the newly installed sign. Her hair was growing back, thin but determined, like spring grass after a hard winter. "You're early," I said, unlocking the door. "Couldn't sleep. Too busy thinking about color schemes." Inside, everything was ready. My designs lined the walls, including prints of the Children's Hospital murals. The oncology ward piece held center stage, a collaboration between aunt and niece that had brought tears to the hospital board's eyes. "Remember when you said I was wasting my potential?" I asked, adjusting a frame. "I remember being an idiot." She wheeled over to the reception desk, running her hand along the smooth wood. But look what came from that idiocy. The bell chimed as Diana entered. "Everything ready for the clients?" "First meetings start in an hour," I confirmed. Aunt Margaret insisted on being here for all of them. "Quality control," Aunt Margaret said primly. Diana smiled. "From what I've seen of your joint work, that's not a bad thing." More people started arriving. Rose and Micah with coffee and pastries, Camila with an armful of fresh flowers, my mother carrying a package wrapped in silver paper. "What's this?" I asked as she handed it to me. "Open it." Inside was a framed newspaper article about the studio opening, focusing on the unique partnership between aunt and niece. The headline read, "Local Artist and Business Icon Unite, a Story of Redemption and Innovation." "Turn it over," Aunt Margaret instructed. On the back was a handwritten note. "To my niece, who taught me that true art isn't just what we create on canvas, but what we build in each other's hearts. Love, Aunt Margaret." "Don't you dare cry," she warned. "Your first clients will be here soon." The door chimed again. Hamza entered, followed by Serena. "Just wanted to wish you luck," he said. "Though from what I've investigated about your upcoming projects, you won't need it." "Still keeping tabs on us?" I teased. Professional habit, he smiled. Plus, someone needs to document this remarkable transformation. Serena stepped forward with a folder. Speaking of documentation, the final partnership papers need signing. As Aunt Margaret and I signed, I noticed her hands were steady, stronger than they'd been in months. The doctors say the treatments are working better than expected, she said, catching my look. Turns out spite is a powerful motivator for recovery. I have to stick around to make sure you don't paint everything in neon colors. The first clients began arriving, a mix of corporate executives and nonprofit directors, all drawn by the studio's unique story and distinctive style. I watched as Aunt Margaret charmed them effortlessly, her business acumen complementing my creative presentations perfectly. During a brief break, Rose pulled me aside. Look at her. I've never seen her so alive. Me neither. It's like she's finally found her purpose. Or maybe, Micah joined us, you both have. The day flew by in a blur of meetings, celebrations, and possibilities. As evening approached, most of the guests had left, leaving just family and close friends. I have something to show you, I told Aunt Margaret, leading her to a covered wall in the back office. If it's another modern art piece, just look. I pulled away the cloth, revealing a gallery wall of family photos, old and new, spanning decades. In the center was a recent picture of Aunt Margaret and me in the hospital, heads bent together over mural sketches, both laughing at something now forgotten. When did you take that? She asked softly. Camila did. Said she wanted to capture the moment we both finally saw each other clearly. Aunt Margaret reached out, touching the photo. You know, I spent my whole life thinking I needed to leave a legacy of wealth and status. I never imagined my true legacy would come from the person I tried hardest to change. Funny how life works out, I said. Funny how love works out, she corrected, even when it's hidden behind anonymous donations and stubborn pride. The setting sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across our new beginning. Outside, the sign for Legacy Design Studios caught the light, glowing like a beacon. Ready to head home? I asked. Not yet. She wheeled back to the main space, where our first commissioned piece hung, a collaborative design that merged her business sensibility with my artistic vision. I want to stay a bit longer, to remember this moment. I understood. This wasn't just a studio opening. It was the opening of a new chapter for both of us. One where criticism had transformed into collaboration, where hurt had healed into understanding, and where revenge had somehow blossomed into redemption. You know what the best revenge really is? Aunt Margaret asked, as if reading my thoughts. What's that? Living well enough to turn your enemies into family, and your family into something even stronger. I squeezed her shoulder gently. Welcome to the family business, Aunt Margaret. Welcome home, Mia, she replied. Welcome home.
Carol Williams gazed out the living room window at the sunset. From the fourth floor of her aging apartment building in Modest Heights, on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, she could see the sun sinking into the distant desert. That view was one of the few luxuries in her 34 years of life. Mom, I finished my homework. A cheerful voice rang out behind her, and Carol turned around with a smile. Her 8-year-old son Noah held up his math workbook, where tiny dinosaur doodles were scattered between neatly arranged numbers. Well done, sweetie. But aren't the dinosaurs distracting you from the math? No way. My dinosaurs are smart, they help me with the calculations. Noah answered proudly before rushing over to the small telescope in the corner of the living room. It was a second-hand birthday gift from Carol, and her astronomy-loving son treasured it more than anything. He was probably looking forward to stargazing again tonight. Carol watched her son's back and sighed. Her salary as a graphic designer at the local publishing house, Desert Print, wasn't much. Though their life was modest, surrounded by an old apartment and second-hand furniture, the peaceful days she had built with her son were priceless to her. Suddenly her phone rang, and the word "Mom" appeared on the screen. Carol hesitated for a moment before answering. "Carol, it's been a while." Eleanor Williams' cold voice came through the receiver. Her mother ran Williams Estate, a real estate company in Phoenix's upscale residential area. After losing her husband early on, she had built the company up single-handedly, earning respect in the industry for her business acumen. But that strength had come at a cost, especially when it came to family bonds. "I've planned a family trip to Desert Mirage, that luxury resort in southern Arizona, for next weekend. You and Noah will come." Carol was speechless. How many years had it been since her mother had invited them on a trip? Their relationship had frozen over when Carol became pregnant at 19 and dropped out of college. Her mother had demanded she get an abortion, and when Carol refused, declared, "You're no longer my daughter." Since then, she had cut off financial support and excluded Carol and Noah from the family. "Well, can you get time off next week?" There was no emotion in her mother's voice. Carol looked at her son, who was now peering through the telescope, absorbed in his star chart. She wanted to give him a chance to spend time with his grandmother and aunt, even if that family wouldn't welcome them warmly. "Yes, that should be fine. I think Noah will be excited." "Good. I'll send the details by email. Vanessa will be there too." The line went dead. Carol let out a deep sigh as she thought about her sister Vanessa. Vanessa was vice president at their mother's company and married to a successful financial analyst. They had no children, but that was her choice. Her sister, who openly declared having children is a waste of time, had never spoken a kind word to Noah. "Mom, who was that on the phone?" Noah asked. "It was Grandma. We're going to stay at a hotel in the desert next week with everyone." "Wow, that's amazing." Noah's eyes sparkled. "The stars must look beautiful in the desert." Carol hugged her son. Faced with his innocent joy, she couldn't voice her anxious premonitions. She could only pray that this trip would somehow thaw their frozen family relationships. In the Arizona twilight, Carol's rental car arrived at Desert Mirage. Noah let out an excited gasp as he looked through the windshield. "Mom, look. It's like a castle." The luxury resort that appeared suddenly in the desert was indeed as grand as a castle. Modern glass walls harmonized beautifully with traditional sandstone elements, gleaming as they reflected the orange sunset. "Look at that huge pool." Noah leaned forward excitedly against the window. Crystal clear blue water was surrounded by elegant parasols and deck chairs. "Careful, Noah," Carol gently steadied her son while feeling her own heart racing. Could they really spend these 4 days peacefully with her mother and sister? A stay at a luxury resort felt so out of place for her. After parking at the entrance, Carol took her son's hand. Noah wore his star-patterned backpack, his eyes shining with excitement. Carol carried their small suitcase as they nervously entered the lobby. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floor. An elegant chandelier hung from the ceiling, and a large fountain decorated with desert flowers stood in the center of the lobby. Life-sized cactus sculptures greeted guests beside it. At the reception desk, a staff member in his 40s wearing a navy suit greeted guests with a smile. His name tag read Michael Scott, General Manager. Carol. Noah. You finally made it. Turning around, they saw Eleanor and Vanessa sitting on lounge sofas. Her mother wore elegant resort wear, while her sister had designer sunglasses perched on her head. Both of them fit perfectly into this setting. Hello, Mom. Vanessa, Carol managed a tense smile. Hi Grandma, hi Auntie. Noah greeted them cheerfully. That's Auntie Vanessa, not just Auntie, Vanessa frowned. I'm not that old. Eleanor merely patted Noah's head briefly before saying, let's check in. It's getting late. Carol and Noah followed her mother and sister to the front desk. When Eleanor said Williams, Michael handled their check-in professionally. Ms. Williams, your 2 grand suites are ready. Carol felt relieved inside. Her mother had actually reserved a room for her and Noah. Maybe this trip could help thaw their frozen family relationships. She held on to that hope as she stood beside her mother. After completing check-in, 2 room keys were handed to Eleanor. She put them in her and Vanessa's bags. Carol waited, but no keys appeared for them. What about our room key? When she asked, Eleanor replied in an icy voice after an unnatural pause. I didn't book a room for you. You can sleep outside. Carol couldn't believe her ears. Mom, what are you saying? This is a joke, right? We didn't have enough in the budget, Eleanor said matter-of-factly. But since it's a family trip, I wanted you to come. There's plenty of desert outside. Vanessa let out a laugh, saying, maybe you can sleep with the camels. Carol's body began to shake. Was it anger, humiliation, or sadness? Her emotions were too complex for words. Mom, we don't have a room. Noah asked in a small voice. His anxious eyes looked up at her. Seeing those eyes brought Carol back to herself. She couldn't get emotional now. What mattered was protecting her son in front of her. It's okay, Noah. Mom will figure something out, she hugged her son's shoulders, trying to sound brave. Michael at the front desk had overheard this conversation and looked troubled. If there's anything I can do to help with your family's accommodation. But Eleanor cut him off. Michael, they won't be staying. With that, her mother and sister walked toward the elevator. Their backs showed no sign of hesitation. Michael looked apologetically at Carol and Noah left standing in the lobby. I'm truly sorry. If there's anything I can do to help. Thank you, but we'll be fine. Carol took her son's hand and walked outside the resort. The desert at dusk was stained red, breathtakingly beautiful. But it was rapidly growing cold. They sat down against the resort wall and took light jackets from their bags. Spreading out the thin blanket they'd brought, they made an impromptu bed on the sand. Mom, are we really sleeping outside? Noah's voice trembled. Carol hugged her son tightly. Don't worry, Noah. Mom will protect you. Tomorrow we'll find another place to stay. Just then, a group appeared coming out of the resort. About 10 people carried cameras and telescopes, wearing bright clothing. Excuse me, are you all right? A woman approached them. She introduced herself as Sarah, a tour guide for the Desert Stargazing Tour. Though Carol stumbled over her words from embarrassment and anger, she briefly explained their situation. "That's terrible," Sarah said. "Please take some blankets and snacks until our tour is finished." "That's not necessary," Carol said stubbornly. "We'll be fine." At that moment, one of the tour participants stepped forward. "Ma'am, please accept our offer, if only to protect your child from the cold. I'm James Morrison, a photographer." He seemed to see something special in Carol's figure embracing her son protectively in the moonlight. "This scene moves my soul. With your permission, may I take some photos?" Carol agreed with a tired expression. James took several photos, and the tour group shared their blankets and food. They promised to check on them after their observation session and disappeared into the desert. The desert night was cold, and Carol and Noah huddled together shivering. Only moonlight illuminated their small figures. Suddenly, Michael walked out from the resort. He wore an expression of someone who had made a decision. Michael led Carol and Noah to the resort's back office. The late-night office was silent, lit only by a desk lamp. First, something warm to drink. Michael boiled water in an electric kettle and made hot chocolate. Noah held the mug with both hands, his expression relaxing at its warmth. "Carol," Michael began as he sat down. 15 years ago, you were a student at Phoenix Design School, weren't you?" Carol's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, but how did you know?" "For your graduation project, you designed branding for a small desert hostel called Sunset Rest, right?" "Yes. But that was just a student project. I never thought it would actually be used." Michael smiled nostalgically. "That design changed my life," he began slowly. "At the time, I was running a small hostel inherited from my grandfather, and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. When I had run out of money and was at my wit's end, I saw a design exhibition at the local university." Michael took an old photograph from his desk drawer. The faded photo showed a sophisticated branding design with a logo featuring the desert sunset. "I had no money, so I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I took a photo of your displayed design and used it as is." Carol gasped. To think her student work had actually been used, and by the owner of this luxury resort, no less. Thanks to that design, bookings at the hostel surged. New guests spread the word, and within 5 years, the business had expanded significantly, and now. Michael gestured broadly at the resort around them. "This is it. Desert Mirage's success started with your design. I've been trying to find you all this time, but the school records had a different name. I was using my mother's maiden name, Kendrick, back then," Carol explained. Michael nodded. "When I witnessed what happened at the front desk tonight and heard your name, I wondered. Then when I saw the photos James took, I knew it was you." He took out his smartphone and displayed an old web page. There was a photo of Carol in her late teens, along with the desert-themed hostel logo and branding she had designed. "I had no idea," Carol's voice trembled with emotion. "Back then, I got pregnant and left school. I had almost given up on design work." Noah listened intently to the conversation between his mother and the stranger while sipping his hot chocolate. Michael's expression turned serious. "Carol, I wouldn't be here today without your design. And what your mother and sister did to you and Noah tonight is absolutely unacceptable at my facility. He stood up and took out a key card. I've prepared our finest suite for you and Noah. The cost is my personal way of repaying you, completely free. Carol expressed her gratitude but worried, but, my mother and sister. They will be dealt with differently, Michael said quietly. The next morning, Carol and Noah were enjoying breakfast in their luxurious suite. They could see the desert sunrise from their room, which even had a small private pool with a fountain on the terrace. Mom, these pancakes are amazing, Noah said with his mouth full. Just then, there was a knock at the door. When opened, Eleanor and Vanessa stood there. Their expressions had completely changed from the previous night. They were pale. How are you here? Eleanor asked in shock. Michael gave us a room, Carol answered quietly. At that moment, Michael appeared in the hallway. Eleanor, Vanessa, your luggage has already been taken to the lobby. This resort does not welcome people who mistreat family. You must leave immediately. Eleanor was furious. Excuse me. Do you know who I am? I'm the owner of William's estate. Michael calmly replied, of course. And I understand your actions. He took out a tablet and opened an Instagram page. There was James's photo of Carol embracing Noah in the moonlight, titled Family's Cruel Act of Abandonment at Luxury Resort. It had gathered tens of thousands of likes and shares in just hours. This post doesn't name you or the resort. However, many people in the comments are speculating about your identities and actions. How you handle this situation is up to you. Eleanor was speechless for a moment before shouting, "This is defamation. I'll sue." Please do. That would only bring more attention and witnesses, Michael shrugged. I'm simply enforcing my resort's rules. People who mistreat family are not qualified to stay here. Vanessa looked at her smartphone and paled. Mom, this photo is being shared in real estate industry group chats. Everyone knows it's us. Eleanor's expression changed from anger to fear. Her real estate business was all about reputation. Now that reputation was crumbling. You have 30 minutes to leave, Michael said. That's my final word. Eleanor and Vanessa looked at Carol with a mix of anger and fear. But neither could say anything, they could only leave. Carol stood there, overwhelmed by complex emotions. She hadn't hated her mother and sister. She had only wanted their acceptance. Are you okay? Michael asked gently. Noah took his mother's hand. Mom, I'm glad we didn't have to sleep with the camels, he said with a serious expression. Carol couldn't help but smile. Yes, Noah. I'm really glad too. Michael smiled at them both. Now, please enjoy the resort to your heart's content. That afternoon, as Carol and Noah relaxed under a poolside parasol, the photographer James approached them. He checked the photos on his camera display with an apologetic expression. Carol, I'm sorry if my post complicated things with your family. Carol shook her head. No, thank you actually. Because of that photo, Michael was able to find us. James looked relieved and sat down in a poolside chair. Actually, I have something else to discuss. He opened his portfolio to show Carol and Noah. It contained photographs capturing bonds between people from around the world, families, lovers, friends. various forms of love captured through his lens. I'm planning to publish a photo book themed around bonds. Actually, I'd like to use the photo I took of you and Noah last night for the cover. Would you give me permission? Carol was surprised. Our photo. But this photo has a special power, James said earnestly. A mother's strength, unconditional love for her child, it's beautifully expressed in the moonlight. Of course, I'll provide proper compensation. Noah's eyes sparkled. Are we going to be famous? Carol looked at her son and, after a moment's thought, nodded. We accept. If our photo can touch someone's heart. The afternoon at the resort passed peacefully. Noah swam in the pool while Carol read a book on a deck chair. Occasionally, a pleasant desert breeze caressed their cheeks. Excuse me, Carol. She turned to find Michael standing there. He had changed from his formal wear into casual resort attire. If you don't mind, would you join me for dinner, both of you? Carol smiled and agreed. At twilight, the three enjoyed dinner in the resort's top-floor restaurant. Through large windows, they could see the sun setting over the desert, its orange light softly illuminating the interior. Noah was engaged in animated conversation with Michael. What kind of animals live in the desert? Well, many are nocturnal. Foxes, coyotes, owls. They use the stars as their guide to live. Noah listened intently to Michael's explanation, his eyes shining. Watching them, Carol felt warmth spreading in her chest. As dinner drew to a close, Michael's expression turned serious. Carol, I have a proposition. He set down his wine glass and continued quietly. Would you be interested in working on rebranding our resort? Carol's eyes widened in surprise. But I just work at a small local publishing house. Talent knows no boundaries between local and urban, Michael said sincerely. Your ability is special. We're planning to expand our resort chain. We need a new visual identity. I think this job would be perfect for you. But Carol hesitated. There's Noah's school to think about. Of course, there's no need to decide right away, Michael smiled gently. Take your time to think it over. That night, after putting Noah to bed, Carol talked with Michael on the resort terrace. The desert night sky overflowed with stars, and distant coyote calls could be heard. I'm seriously considering your offer, Carol said. But I'm scared to change everything. Michael took her hand. Carol, I waited 15 years for you. I can wait a little longer. You could wait until Noah's school year ends, then come. I'll respect whatever decision you make. Carol was touched by his words and looked at Michael. She could sense sincerity and warmth in him. For a long time, she had wanted someone to see her true self. And now, that person was right in front of her. Actually, I've been thinking, Carol said, gathering her courage. Noah has fallen in love with this place, and he's good at adapting to new schools. Plus, these 3 days with you have helped me believe in my possibilities again. Michael's face lit up at her determination. Then, officially, Carol Williams, would you join us as creative director of Desert Mirage? Carol nodded with a smile. Yes, I'd love to. The next morning, on what was supposed to be their departure day, Carol received a call from James. His photo book's publisher had shown great interest in the photo of Carol and Noah, and even before publication, a famous fashion brand, Essence, had requested them for their advertising campaign. It's a campaign expressing the bond between mother and child, strength, and beauty. They were moved by your true story. Carol was stunned. Her life was about to change dramatically in just 1 week. I don't think I'm the type to be a fashion model. They're not looking for professional models, but the genuine relationship between you and Noah, James said. You're already giving courage and hope to many people. Carol boldly accepted. It wasn't just about the job, it was about the possibility that her and Noah's experience might help others. That evening, instead of returning home, Carol and Noah went with Michael to look at a house near the resort. It was a modern cottage that blended into the desert landscape, just 15 minutes away by car. I hope you like it, Michael said, appearing slightly nervous. Noah let out an excited cry at the desert view through the large windows. Mom, look! We can see lots of stars from our yard. Carol's heart filled with gratitude toward Michael, and she said, we couldn't ask for a better place. For the first time in a long while, she felt she had found a place she could truly call home. 1 year later, Carol and Noah were living a peaceful new life in their cottage near Desert Mirage. Outside the window, the desert sunrise gently illuminated the red rock faces. Carol had found great success as the resort's creative director. The resort chain, rebranded under her design, had become even more popular as the jewel of the desert. Noah had made many new friends at his local school and enjoyed desert expeditions and horseback riding lessons with Michael every weekend. Michael had become like a father figure to him. Carol and Michael's relationship had deepened, and they had just announced their engagement. They were planning a simple desert wedding, and Noah was thrilled to be the ring bearer. James's photo book had been a huge success, with Carol and Noah's desert photo being featured in many media outlets as a symbol of maternal love. The Essence brand campaign had also made an impact, with part of the proceeds being donated to organizations supporting single mothers. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Vanessa's real estate business had taken a major hit. As the social media incident spread, Williams' estate's reputation had plummeted, with many clients canceling contracts. Vanessa's husband had filed for divorce, citing damaging the family's reputation, and their luxurious lifestyle was beginning to crumble. One rainy afternoon, Carol had an unexpected visitor in her office. Eleanor Williams is here to see you, her secretary announced. Eleanor appeared not in her former dignified state, but wearing modest clothes with a tired expression. Carol, the company is about to go bankrupt. I'm about to lose everything. I need your help. Carol couldn't believe her ears. Why should I help you? Because you're my daughter. Eleanor's eyes welled with tears. I was wrong about everything. I want to make amends. Carol gazed out at the desert through her window. As various emotions conflicted within her, she looked at Noah's photo on her desk and took a deep breath. What was the point of holding on to hatred? I can't provide direct financial aid, Carol said slowly. But I can arrange for Michael to give advice on rebuilding the company. She hesitated for a moment before continuing, and, if you really want to change, why not start by being a grandmother in Noah's life? He's turning 9 next week. Hope flickered across Eleanor's face. Really? You'll give me a chance. People can change at any time. I did. A few weeks later, at Noah's birthday party, Eleanor showed genuine affection for the first time. She gave her grandson a handmade astronomy kit and said in a small voice, "I want to be a real grandmother from now on." Vanessa also began to change over time, showing genuine interest in Noah for the first time. After her divorce, she had lost her former arrogance and become more humble. As Carol watched the desert sunset from the resort terrace with Michael and Noah, she thought that having to sleep in the desert that night might have been the best turning point in her life. "Sometimes when you're lost in the desert, you find the most beautiful scenery," she said to Michael. Michael took her hand and said, "Fate sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms." Noah drew pictures in the sand in front of them, smiling happily. Behind him, Eleanor and Vanessa stood hesitantly, exploring their new family dynamic. Under the sunset-stained desert sky, their new story was about to begin. I still vividly remember that day, the day I first met Mr. Bennett in the pediatric ward of Massachusetts General Hospital. Spring sunlight was streaming through the windows of the patient rooms as I made my routine rounds through the corridors, filled with the familiar scent of disinfectant. An elderly gentleman in an expensive suit visited one of my critically ill pediatric patients. He was the patient's grandfather, Robert Bennett, who would later become my father-in-law. That evening, when his son Michael came to visit, we exchanged words for the first time. He greeted me, in my nurse's uniform, with a natural, warm smile. "Nurse, my father told me about you. Thank you so much for taking such dedicated care of my grandfather." He spoke to me in a gentle tone, quite different from his father's stern demeanor, with a smile that radiated warmth. His eyes held a kindness that respected others as equals. That was our beginning. My courtship with Michael was like something out of a movie. Despite his prestigious position as a senior engineer at a Google-affiliated company, he was surprisingly humble and treated me, a nurse from a middle-class family, with genuine respect. On weekends, we would stroll through the Boston Museum of Fine Arts and the Public Garden, and attend classical concerts in old churches. However, the first shadow fell over our happiness when I met his mother. In the quiet residential area of Chestnut Hill, a Victorian mansion stood with dignified elegance beyond a garden where magnolias bloomed in full glory. Patricia Bennett received me in that mansion. In a reception room filled with antique furniture, she maintained perfect poise while pouring tea. Yet from that moment, I noticed something cold in her eyes. Behind her flawless smile, I caught a glimpse of contempt. A nurse? Well, that's a noble profession. Though young women in this area tend to choose more, shall we say, creative careers. The sarcasm in her words was unmistakable. Contempt for me seemed to ooze from her entire being, clothed in luxury brands. After our engagement announcement, the situation gradually worsened. During the wedding preparations, Mrs. Patricia orchestrated various forms of harassment. Most memorable was on our wedding day when she had arranged for the venue staff to mistake me for a cleaning lady. The staff looked utterly confused when they saw me in my white wedding gown. Nevertheless, our wedding was beautiful. At St. Thomas Church in Chestnut Hill, bathed in spring sunlight, we exchanged our vows of eternal love. Light streaming through the stained glass windows seemed to bless us as we stood at the altar. However, the real trial came afterward. My mother-in-law's reaction when I announced my pregnancy still pains my heart. We sat across from each other at her luxurious dining room table. Oh my, carrying my grandchild. Are you quite sure? It didn't take long to understand the implication of those words. Soon after, rumors about me began circulating in Chestnut Hill's social circles. Led by Margaret Sullivan, Patricia's best friend, whispers about the nurse who seduced a son from a good family began floating around elegant tea parties. As my due date approached, the situation became even more serious. On the day of my baby shower, my mother-in-law suddenly claimed illness and didn't attend. I later learned she had been enjoying lunch with friends at the country club that day. Photos had been posted on social media but were quickly deleted. My husband Michael, caught up in a busy period at work, hadn't noticed the gravity of these events. Between late-night meetings and overseas business trips, he tried his best to care for me, but his kindness only highlighted my loneliness. I was forced to face this twisted situation alone. The day I first held our daughter Emily in my arms at the hospital, I made a vow. I would protect this child from any form of discrimination. Her brown hair and blue eyes were proof of our love. However, that resolve would be tested sooner than I expected. That Sunday morning began with gentle spring sunshine. Cherry blossoms and dogwoods were in full bloom along the tree-lined streets of Chestnut Hill, and white magnolia flowers swayed in the breeze in the garden of the old Bennett family mansion. Holding Emily, I hesitated for a moment at the entrance. Looking up, the elegant Victorian building seemed to loom over me intimidatingly. The heavy wooden door with its brass knocker gleamed, telling tales of the house's history. "Welcome, Jennifer." Patricia opened the door with a perfect smile. She wore a Carolina Herrera two-piece suit, specially ordered for today, with a Van Cleef and Arpels necklace sparkling at her throat. Her bearing was as elegant as if she were gracing the cover of the Social Register. About 30 guests had already gathered in the reception room. The cream of Chestnut Hill society was elegantly sipping champagne, surrounded by antique furniture. Under the large crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling, vases filled with spring flowers scattered light across the tables. "Oh, so this is the baby everyone's been talking about." Margaret Sullivan approached, dispensing false pleasantries. Her eyes examined Emily as if appraising an unusual exhibit. "Does she really look like Michael?" Small laughs rippled through the room at her words. I held Emily closer to my chest, instinctively protecting her from the deliberate malice. The party proceeded with superficial elegance. Exquisite hors d'oeuvres were served one after another, accompanied by fine wines and impeccable service from perfectly trained staff. Yet beneath this refined atmosphere, something cold always lurked. The gift-giving ceremony began. A Hermes baby blanket, a Tiffany silver spoon, a Ralph Lauren baby clothing collection. Each gift seemed to proclaim the social status of its giver. Finally, Patricia stood up. "This is my special gift." She presented a small box tied with a blue ribbon. The room's atmosphere seemed to freeze for a moment. "Go ahead, open it." My hands trembled. Inside the box was a pink cat collar with a Tiffany charm, clearly expensive, but its meaning was cruelly clear. "Oh, isn't it perfect?" Patricia's voice rang through the reception room. "After all, this child is the offspring of a stray cat my son picked up, isn't she?" Malicious laughter filled the room. Before my eyes, Patricia brought the collar close to Emily's neck, her gestures almost like someone petting a real kitten. "Please stop." My voice trembled. But Patricia pretended not to hear and moved the collar even closer to Emily's neck. The baby began crying, distressed by the sudden contact. There, perfect. More laughter echoed through the room. Tears rolled down my cheeks. At that moment, I thought to take out my smartphone and record this scene. With trembling hands, I pressed the record button as discreetly as possible. "Oh, Jennifer. Why are you crying? Can't you take a joke?" Patricia's voice dripped with false concern, but her eyes gleamed triumphantly. "I'm sorry. Emily seems unwell." I stood up and hastily left the room. I could still hear laughter behind me. In the hallway, I immediately called Michael. It went to voicemail. Right, he had mentioned an important meeting today. On my way to the entrance, I passed Robert Bennett on the landing. He seemed about to say something when he saw my tear-stained face, but I couldn't stop. Back home, I immediately went to my computer and backed up the video from my phone. Then I began organizing the emails and photos I had been saving as evidence of the harassment. Wiping away tears, I strengthened my resolve. No more running away. This humiliation would be the last. That night, Michael returned home after 11 p.m. His tired expression told of a day spent chasing Silicon Valley project deadlines. His dark navy suit was slightly wrinkled from long hours of video conferences. "Jennifer? You're still up?" Michael stopped when he saw me waiting in the living room. He immediately noticed my red, swollen eyes. "What happened? Did something happen at Mother's party?" Those words triggered something in me. All the emotions I had been desperately holding back came flooding out. "Your mother, she did something to Emily." With trembling hands, I took out my smartphone and played the video. The cruel laughter from that room played through the speakers. The screen clearly showed Patricia bringing the cat collar close to Emily's neck. The color drained from Michael's face. He sat down slowly on the sofa, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Is this some kind of joke?" His voice betrayed the confusion of someone confronted with an unbelievable reality. "This is no joke. This is what your mother did to our daughter in front of 30 people today. But this is just the tip of the iceberg." I opened my computer and began showing him the evidence I had collected. Harassing emails from before the wedding. Deliberate spread of rumors in social circles. The baby shower incident. All organized chronologically in folders that opened one after another. Why didn't you tell me before?" Michael's voice shook. "Because you were busy. And, honestly, I had my pride. I wanted to handle this situation on my own." Michael stood up with a deep sigh and walked to the window. His reflection was visible in the window overlooking the night view. "Mother, she's always been a perfectionist. I knew she was overly concerned with family background, education, and social status, but I never imagined it would go this far." He turned back and looked straight into my eyes. "Jennifer, I'm so sorry. I should have noticed. I failed to protect my wife and daughter from this treatment." His words brought fresh tears to my eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. "But that's enough. I can't stay silent anymore." That collar was the final insult. Michael nodded slowly. "Let's go see Father tomorrow. Father he'll make the right decision." That night, we talked for a long time. By Emily's bedside as she slept, we planned our next steps. Occasionally, we could hear the baby's peaceful breathing. Each time, it renewed our determination. The next morning, in the car heading to Robert Bennett's law office, Michael spoke quietly. "Mother needs to change. If she won't, then we need to change the definition of family. The morning sun reflected brightly off the skyscrapers in Boston's financial district. Robert Bennett's office was on the top floor. In the reception area filled with the rich scent of leather, the secretary announced our arrival. "I've been expecting you." Robert Bennett received us in his spacious office surrounded by large windows. Dressed in a navy Brooks Brothers suit, his expression suggested he had already sensed something. "I've already heard about yesterday's incident from Margaret Sullivan's daughter. She was deeply ashamed of her mother's behavior." He had already begun taking action before we showed our evidence. As expected of a senior partner at a major law firm. His efficiency gave me some comfort. However, I didn't expect this much evidence. Robert's expression grew increasingly stern as he watched the video. "This is clear psychological abuse. Against a 2-month-old infant, no less." He sighed deeply and took a photograph from his desk drawer. It was a photo of a younger Patricia. She always had a tendency to demand perfection. But that was also a reflection of her own insecurities. "I've heard her mother was similar." I leaned forward at those words. "You mean, this has been a generational issue?" "Yes. The values peculiar to high society have been passed down in a distorted form through generations. But that's no excuse. Rather, we must break this cycle now." Robert stood and walked to the window. Looking down at Boston's cityscape, he spoke his decision. "From today, we begin concrete action. First, we'll inform the church authorities. Then report to the charity organizations she's involved with. And simultaneously..." He paused for a moment. "We'll begin divorce preparations. This is my decision. She needs time to deeply reflect on her actions." The air in the room froze at those words. That's..." I couldn't hide my confusion. I hadn't expected things to escalate this far. "Jennifer, don't worry. This is between Patricia and me. It's also my responsibility for pretending not to notice for so long." Robert's voice carried firm resolve. "However, there's something we need to do first. Call an emergency family meeting. Patricia needs to understand the gravity of her actions." He returned to his desk and called his secretary on the intercom. "Prepare the conference room immediately. I'll contact Patricia directly." After hanging up, he turned to us. "This will be a difficult time. But remember this. This decision is also for Emily's future. I don't want her to inherit these distorted values." A heavy atmosphere hung over the top floor of the skyscraper housing Robert Bennett's law office. The main family members had already gathered in the conference room. The first thing that caught my eye was Patricia's clearly distressed state, unusual for someone known for her graceful composure. She couldn't hide her confusion at her husband's emergency summons, and even her usually perfect makeup seemed slightly disheveled. "What is this meeting for? So early in the morning?" Her voice held a hint of anxiety beneath its usual arrogance. "You'll know soon enough." Robert's voice was cold. He sat at the end of the large conference table, reviewing documents. Family members arrived one after another. Patricia's sister Elizabeth, her brother James, and Robert's brother Richard. All took their seats, unable to hide their agitation. Michael and I were directed to sit next to Robert. From the conference room windows, Boston's cityscape spread out before us. Church spires were visible through the morning haze. Somewhere, church bells struck 9. "Let's begin." Robert stood up. He took a tablet and projected an image onto the wall screen. Patricia, could you explain this? The screen showed footage from that Sunday's party. The audio began playing through the room. Patricia's cruel words, the surrounding laughter, and the babies crying. This can't be. The color drained from Patricia's face. Wait, this was just a joke. Everyone was laughing, weren't they? A joke? Robert's voice resonated deeply. You call psychological abuse of a 2-month-old infant a joke? He manipulated the tablet further. The screen displayed evidence of past harassment, one after another. Emails, social media posts, secretly taken photos. All organized chronologically. Were these all jokes too? But she. Patricia pointed at me. She's not of our class. How could a mere middle-class nurse be part of our family? Silence. Robert's angry voice echoed through the conference room. Everyone held their breath. That statement just made everything clear. Your deep-rooted discrimination. He took out some documents. This is a divorce mediation application. I've already consulted with lawyers. What? Patricia's voice trembled. And these are copies of reports to the board. More documents were presented. A demand for resignation from the Boston Ladies Charity Foundation presidency. Notice of removal from the St. Thomas Church Board. And... Wait! Patricia cried out. Don't I have a right to explain? You've already exercised that right, Robert said coldly. Just now, you revealed your true feelings in front of everyone. A heavy silence fell over the conference room. Your actions go beyond individual misconduct. This time, Richard Bennett spoke up. This is a serious matter affecting the honor of the Bennett family. Appropriate measures are necessary. So, you're cutting me off. Patricia's voice took on a hysterical tone. You need time for deep reflection and rehabilitation, Richard continued. First, I suggest you move to the family home in Cambridge. Cambridge. But that old house. You have no choice, Robert interrupted. The arrangements with the moving company are already made. At this point, Elizabeth quietly spoke up. Patricia, you've always sought perfection too much. Just like Mother. Liz. Even you. But this time you went too far. A baby? To be so cruel to a 2-month-old baby. Tears welled up in Elizabeth's eyes. We received similar treatment from Mother. But to repeat it with the next generation. Her words changed the atmosphere in the conference room. Family members who had been silent began speaking up. The darkness carried by generations of Bennett women gradually came to light. That's exactly why, Robert raised his voice. We must break this chain now. He stood and walked to the window. Patricia, you have two choices. One is to accept all these measures and walk the path of rehabilitation while receiving counseling. The other is all-out confrontation. But in that case, we won't hesitate to take legal action. We have plenty of evidence of abuse. You mean, criminal charges? Patricia's voice was like a shriek. That depends on your choice. At this moment, something unexpected happened. Michael, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly stood up. Mother. His voice was filled with sadness. I love you. But if you're not willing to change. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I will fully support Father's measures to protect my family. This might be my final act of filial love." At those words, Patricia's composure crumbled. For the first time, she began shedding real tears. "Michael. I. She suddenly turned to face me. "Jennifer. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she began sobbing violently. The heavy atmosphere in the conference room gradually began to shift. Outside the window, a ray of light began breaking through the clouds. Robert slowly began gathering the documents. "Let's confirm the decisions. Patricia will move to the family home in Cambridge. She will immediately resign from all social positions. She will receive counseling twice a week. For 6 months, she will be prohibited from meeting Emily. Any contact after that will depend on the counselor's judgment. Are there any objections?" Everyone in the room quietly nodded, each carrying their own thoughts. After the meeting, I found myself alone with Robert in the hallway. "Are such severe measures really?" "Jennifer," he smiled gently. "Sometimes we must hurt those we love to save them. That's what real family means." I nodded deeply at his words. Outside the window, spring sunlight embraced the city, announcing the beginning of a new season. Change sometimes brings pain. But true healing lies beyond that pain. Our new family story was about to begin. About 6 months after that day, the scenery in Chestnut Hill had changed to autumn colors. In the garden of our new home, maple leaves were falling, and warm afternoon sunlight streamed in. Emily was now 8 months old. She lay on a baby blanket in the garden, reaching for the colorful fallen leaves with an innocent smile. Her brown hair had grown a bit longer, and her blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. Watching her smile makes everything feel worthwhile. I turned at Michael's voice behind me. He had been working from home more often lately. Even after his promotion to new project leader, he chose to prioritize time with his family. "How was the counselor's report today?" Michael let out a deep sigh. "Mother is changing, little by little. Especially, she's finally starting to face the root causes of her behavior." Patricia had been living quietly in the family home in Cambridge. The twice-weekly counseling sessions had apparently become a major turning point for her. "Last week, I received a letter from Mother." Michael pulled an envelope from his pocket. On expensive stationery, Patricia's neat handwriting formed the words. "For years, I've avoided facing the darkness within me. I unconsciously accepted the values inherited from my mother as absolute, unable to recognize their distortion." The letter contained her first sincere confessions. "Through counseling, I'm beginning to understand how cruel and inhumane my actions were. Particularly, my behavior toward an innocent baby can never be forgiven. I closed my eyes involuntarily. The memory of that day still comes back occasionally. Jennifer, I want to offer my heartfelt apology for everything I've done to you and Emily." I couldn't read any further. Tears were flowing from my eyes. "Mother isn't asking for forgiveness," Michael said quietly. "I think she just needed to acknowledge her mistakes and put them into words." Just then, we heard a car approaching from beyond the garden. "Ah, Father." Robert Bennett entered the garden in his usual navy suit. Recently, he had been visiting every weekend, cherishing his time with his granddaughter. "Ah, what beautiful weather today." He approached Emily with a broad smile. His usually stern expression always softened completely in front of his granddaughter. Looking at this child's smile reminds me of what truly matters in life. Robert had been saying such things more often lately. The divorce mediation was complete, and he had begun walking a new path in life. By the way, he turned to us. I heard from Elizabeth the other day. Elizabeth, Patricia's sister, currently works as a psychological counselor in the Boston suburbs. She says Patricia's changes are definitely progressing. Particularly, she's beginning to show deep understanding of the trauma inherited from her mother and its impact on the next generation. Michael and I exchanged glances at those words. Actually, I have one more thing to report. Robert pulled a photograph from his jacket pocket. It showed a young Patricia holding baby Michael. She often looks at this photo during counseling sessions, apparently, to remember her pure love as a mother. The autumn sunlight gently illuminated the photograph. The doctor says we might be able to lift the visitation restriction soon. I felt my heart beat strongly at those words. However, Robert chose his words carefully. Jennifer's wishes take absolute priority. There will be no pressure. I watched Emily playing on the lawn. She was picking up fallen leaves and examining them with sparkling eyes. Let me think about it. Just then, Emily suddenly turned to us and flashed a brilliant smile. At that innocent smile, I made my decision. But I think, someday, Emily will need her grandmother. Michael gently embraced my shoulders. There's no need to rush, Robert said kindly. Little by little, at your own pace. That's the best medicine. A pleasant breeze swept through the garden in the evening light. Red maple leaves danced down as if in blessing. Our new family story had only just begun. Surely, various trials still awaited us ahead. But we're not afraid anymore. Because we've learned that true strength isn't about seeking perfection, but about accepting imperfection, learning from it, and growing together. Emily picked up another fallen leaf. Her profile, illuminated by the setting sun, shone like an angel. Hope always exists in such simple daily moments. We had etched this certain truth in our hearts. In the sunlit kitchen, Jennifer stood at the stove, skillfully flipping pancakes. The aroma of fluffy pancakes wafted through the room, mingling with the sweet scent of maple syrup. The clock showed 6:30 in the morning. Outside the window, bird songs pierced the early morning stillness, and dew glistened on the neighbors' lawns. Dressed in a simple dress with a white apron, Jennifer was busy with her usual morning routine. Her ability to scan work documents while cooking pancakes with one hand was a skill she'd perfected over 3 years as a single mother. "Mom, it smells wonderful." Kevin's voice rang out, accompanied by the sound of feet rushing down the stairs. Her son burst into the kitchen in his pajamas, his large brown eyes sparkling with excitement. The blue and white striped pajamas were getting a bit short. He's grown again, Jennifer thought. "Good morning, Kevin," Jennifer smiled as she turned around. "These are my special pancakes. It's a special day, after all." "Yay!" Kevin threw his hands up in joy. "I finished my craft project homework too." The teacher praised me. As she nodded at her son's innocent report, Jennifer mentally reviewed her schedule. After breakfast, she needed to do a final check of her work presentation, followed by an afternoon meeting with a new client. Her reputation as an interior designer was slowly growing, but she couldn't afford to let her guard down. The past 3 years as a single mother hadn't been easy, juggling work and childcare, but she'd found ways to make it work. As she arranged pancakes on the kitchen counter, the phone suddenly rang. Seeing "Mom" on the screen, Jennifer hesitated for a moment. Conversations with her mother always brought tension. Her mother Barbara, always dressed in luxury brands and concerned with appearances, had never accepted her daughter's divorce. "Good morning, Jennifer." Her mother's voice from the receiver was unusually cheerful. Jennifer felt her back straighten instinctively. "This is rare, calling so early." "I have a wonderful suggestion," Barbara continued. "Let's have a family vacation next weekend at a private beach. Susan and Robert will be joining us. It'll be a perfect opportunity to strengthen our family bonds." Jennifer frowned. Since the divorce, her relationship with her family had become complicated. Her mother, in particular, saw the divorce as shameful and often made cutting remarks. Her sister Susan, decked out in flashy clothes and accessories, would boast about her wealthy married life and barely concealed her disdain for her sister's circumstances. Their father Robert, indecisive as always, simply went along with his wife's wishes, his graying hair and tired expression telling their own story. "Are you planning to bring Kevin?" "Of course. I want to see my grandson." Her mother's voice carried an unnatural cheerfulness. Jennifer looked at her son. Kevin was watching her with an expectant expression, his cheeks full of pancake. "Are we going to see Grandma?" His eyes sparkled. His innocent smile made Jennifer's heart waver. "All right, we'll join you." Even after hanging up, something felt off. This sudden invitation from her usually cold mother. Instead of starting with criticism of her daughter's life choices as usual, today was different. However, seeing Kevin's excited face, that uneasy feeling gradually faded. "Hey, Kevin," Jennifer sat next to her son and gently stroked his hair. "We're going to the beach with Grandma and everyone next weekend. You can look forward to it." "Yay!" Kevin jumped up with joy. "Can I collect seashells? I want to use them for my crafts." "Yes, of course," Jennifer hugged her son tenderly. "We'll collect lots of them." The morning sun bathed the kitchen in golden light as mother and son continued their breakfast. The leaves of the houseplant by the window swayed gently in the breeze. To Jennifer, this peaceful morning scene seemed like it would last forever. About 2 hours after departing from Miami's port, the white yacht approached a small uninhabited island in the Caribbean. The transparent blue surface of the sea reflected the sunlight, creating a dazzling brilliance. White clouds drifted peacefully above the endless horizon. Kevin, standing at the bow feeling the wind, let out an excited shout. "Mom, look! Dolphins!" The passengers cheered at the sight of dolphins swimming alongside the boat. Kevin's eyes sparkled as he watched them leap gracefully. Jennifer placed her hand on her son's shoulder, wearing a gentle smile. She had decided on this trip for her son's sake. Behind her expensive sunglasses, Barbara muttered something. Just like a scene from a movie, her voice had an eerie undertone. Susan sat with her husband Tom in deck chairs, sipping expensive champagne. Robert stood alone at the stern, seemingly lost in thought. As they approached the island, its features became clearer. A white sandy beach curved in a gentle arc, backed by dense palm trees. It was like a scene from a postcard. At the island's highest point stood an old white lighthouse. The deteriorating building seemed to gaze lonely at the sky. "It's a lighthouse built in the 1950s, Robert explained, his voice trembling slightly. "It's not used anymore, but it's the island's landmark." When they reached the dock, the family began unloading their luggage. Susan, wearing a flashy swimsuit under a flowing chiffon cover-up, carried an expensive cooler with her husband. There was something rushed about their movements. Jennifer, why don't you and Kevin go play on the beach? Barbara suggested. Her eyes flickered slightly beneath her perfect makeup. We can handle the luggage. Though something felt off about those words, Jennifer nodded when she saw her son's expectant eyes. Kevin had already started jogging toward the sandy beach. The white beach was more beautiful than imagined, with crystal-clear waves gently lapping at the shore. The sand felt soft under their feet, and colorful seashells were scattered along the waterline. Kevin immediately became absorbed in collecting shells. Mom, look at this. Her son proudly held up a starfish-shaped shell. It gleamed with a pearly luster in the sunlight. I can use this for my school craft project. As Jennifer walked along the beach with her son, she occasionally checked on her family. They were carrying luggage to a spot slightly away from the beach, engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion. Their gestures were emphatic, and their occasional glances in her direction were concerning. Her father seemed to shake his head several times but finally nodded with a deep sigh. As the afternoon heat intensified, her mother approached. Behind her perfect smile, some other emotion seemed to lurk. We're going to get some supplies, Barbara announced in an unusually gentle tone, quite different from her typical haughty manner. Her white linen dress swayed in the sea breeze. We'll pick up what we need at the market we saw on the way to the island. Those words sent a wave of anxiety through Jennifer. They had loaded everything they needed before departure. Besides, she hadn't heard of any market in this area. But before she could voice these concerns, her family had already started loading things onto the boat. Their efficiency suggested this had been planned. Mom? Jennifer called out suddenly. Something was wrong. Everything was wrong. The moment she felt this instinctively, the boat's engine roared to life. Wait! Where are you going? Jennifer screamed desperately. She ran across the beach. Ignoring the burning sensation of hot sand against her bare feet, she sprinted desperately to the water's edge. But the boat had already left the shore. Her mother wore a cold smile as she slowly spoke. Cruel eyes gleamed beneath her perfect makeup. We won't be coming back. Paradise suits you better, don't you think? Mom, I'm scared. Kevin clutched Jennifer's hand with a trembling voice. His small hand was cold with sweat. Please, everyone. Think about Kevin. To Jennifer's desperate cry, her mother delivered her final words. Goodbye, Jennifer. Enjoy your paradise. The white yacht grew smaller and smaller. Susan didn't even look back, continuing to sip champagne with her husband. Her father kept his head down, gripping the railing tightly. Only the gentle sound of waves reached the ears of the stranded mother and son. Jennifer's mind went blank. Her knees gave way, and she collapsed onto the sand. Beside her, Kevin began to cry. Faced with this unbelievable reality, her thoughts seemed to freeze. Events from the past few days raced through her mind like a film reel: her mother's sudden invitation, the unnatural kindness, their rushed behavior. It had all been planned. As dusk approached, the sky began to turn crimson. The sound of waves that had seemed beautiful earlier now felt ominous. Checking their belongings, they found only a small bag containing a water bottle, light snacks, towels, and Kevin's craft kit. The cell phone showed no signal. The "no service" message on the screen forcefully reminded them of their situation. Jennifer surveyed the island. No passing ships in sight, no means of communication. Limited food. and an 8-year-old son trembling with fear. Waves of terror, anger, and deep sadness washed over her. "It's okay, Kevin," she forced herself to keep her voice steady. Though trying to put on a brave face, tears spilled from her eyes. "Mom will find a way to get us out of here." Jennifer couldn't sleep at all while waiting for dawn. The sound of crashing waves sometimes seemed like her mother's cold laughter. Kevin, exhausted, slept in his mother's arms. Looking at his young sleeping face in the moonlight, her heart ached. When the sun began to rise, Kevin woke up. Jennifer gently caressed her son's cheek as he wore an anxious expression. "Good morning, Kevin. Let's look for water first." Jennifer stood up, careful to keep her voice from trembling. "We'll explore the island. I'm sure we'll find something interesting." She checked the contents of their small bag. The water bottle was still half full, but it wouldn't last long. For food, they had just a few snacks. And Kevin's precious craft kit, containing scissors, a utility knife, screwdrivers, pliers, and other tools. "Mom, look at that." In the direction Kevin pointed, palm trees grew thickly. They could see fruit hanging from them. "Those are coconuts. I saw on TV during craft time that they have water inside." Jennifer found hope in her son's knowledge. Together, they began collecting fallen coconuts. Using a screwdriver from Kevin's craft kit, they managed to make a hole in the shell after some effort. Clear liquid flowed out. "Kevin, your knowledge really helped." Jennifer hugged her son. "I couldn't have done it alone." Those words brightened Kevin's face a little. "What should we look for next?" They began exploring the island. Beyond the palm trees, they found banana trees. While some fruits were still green, others looked ripe enough to eat. Further in, they discovered a small stream. The water was clear and could be drinkable if boiled. "Kevin, I wonder if we can make fire," Jennifer pondered. "Is there anything useful in your craft kit?" Kevin opened his craft kit with a serious expression. "The teacher taught us. If we have a magnifying glass." Kevin took out the magnifying glass from his craft kit and began gathering fallen leaves. As the sunlight grew stronger, they succeeded in starting a fire using the magnifying glass. Jennifer felt surprise and pride in her son's ingenuity. "Mom, am I being helpful?" "Yes, very much so," Jennifer answered, holding back tears. "You're such a clever boy." After boiling water and having a simple meal of bananas and coconuts, they decided to look for shelter from rain. While walking around the island in the hot sun, they found a natural hollow behind a large rock. "We could take shelter from rain and wind here." However, Kevin's eyes were fixed on something else. The white building looming beyond the hollow, the old lighthouse. "Mom, should we explore inside the lighthouse?" Jennifer hesitated for a moment. The decaying building might be dangerous. But there might also be something useful inside. After careful consideration, they decided to head toward the lighthouse together. They climbed the stairs one careful step at a time. While the floor was rotted in places, the walls seemed solid. When they reached the top floor, Kevin let out a surprised cry. "Mom, look at this." In a corner of the lighthouse equipment, there was an old communication device. Probably used by the Coast Guard in the 1950s. It was covered in dust and didn't look operational at first glance. "Kevin, this is where your craft skills can shine." Jennifer placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "If we can fix this, we might be able to call for help." "Yes." Kevin's eyes lit up. My craft teacher said that if you can figure out why something's broken, you can fix it. For the rest of the day, mother and son worked together to repair the communication device. Kevin's small hands skillfully handled the parts while Jennifer assisted. They cleaned each component, tightened loose screws, and polished rusty connections. As dusk approached and it became difficult to continue working, suddenly a faint noise came from the machine. "We did it!" Kevin jumped with joy. At that moment, tears welled up in Jennifer's eyes. Pride, relief, and gratitude toward her son overwhelmed her. They held each other tightly. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from the communication device. "This is the Coast Guard." "Who is this?" Jennifer explained their situation with a trembling voice. She told them they were stranded on an uninhabited island near the Florida Keys, alone with her 8-year-old son, with limited water and food. "Understood. We are currently pinpointing your location. A rescue boat will be dispatched. Please remain where you are." When she heard those words, Jennifer made a vow in her heart. They had overcome this ordeal thanks to her son, without a doubt. From now on, she would help nurture his talents even more. Together, parent and child had learned the importance of never giving up, using their wisdom, and working together. As stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the sound of a helicopter approached from afar. A searchlight illuminated the island, and the rescue team descended. Kevin smiled through his tired face and squeezed Jennifer's hand tightly. "Mom, we did it." "Yes," Jennifer pulled her son close. "We made it through because we were together." As they boarded the rescue helicopter, they looked back at the island. Though it had only been 2 days, their experience on the island had strengthened the bond between mother and son. In the interrogation room at the Miami Coast Guard headquarters, Jennifer was giving her statement. Though tired, she explained the events in a steady voice. In the next room, a social worker was gently listening to Kevin's story. "So, under the pretense of a family vacation, you were taken to an uninhabited island and abandoned there," investigator Mike Reynolds confirmed while taking notes. "The involved parties are your mother Barbara Miller, your father Robert Miller, your sister Susan Taylor, and her husband Tom Taylor. Is that correct?" "Yes," Jennifer answered quietly. "But my father," he seemed to hesitate until the end. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and an elderly man entered. Wearing a well-tailored suit, he presented his business card. "I'm James Wilson Jr. I served as legal counsel to your grandmother, Margaret Wilson." Jennifer looked up in surprise. Her grandmother Margaret had passed away 5 years ago. She was a woman who had built up the regional famous bakery chain, Wilson's Homemade Bakery, from scratch. "Actually, I have important information," Wilson continued with a solemn expression. "Now that your mother has been arrested, I can finally tell you." He took documents from his black leather briefcase. It was a copy of her grandmother's will. "Margaret changed her will 5 years ago. It names you as the sole heir to the chain's management rights and all assets." "Me?" Jennifer's voice trembled. "But I heard my mother inherited everything." "That's the heart of the matter," Wilson quietly continued his explanation. "Margaret highly valued your sincerity and effort. On the other hand, she was concerned about Barbara's strong tendencies toward vanity and pretense." The air in the room grew tense. "The will was scheduled to be opened on your 35th birthday, next month. However, Barbara somehow learned of its contents. And before it could be opened, she planned to eliminate you." He chose his words carefully. At that moment, all the pieces of her mother's abnormal behavior fell into place. The sudden proposal of a family vacation. The unnatural kindness. And that cruel betrayal. Then my father and sister too. Their accomplices, Investigator Reynolds, who had returned to the interrogation room, announced. We've arrested them all. Messages found on Tom Taylor's cell phone show evidence of their planning. Jennifer let out a deep sigh. More than sadness, she felt emptiness in her heart. Just then, Kevin's laughter could be heard from the next room. Her son's cheerful voice softened her heart a little. What matters now is the future, Wilson spoke kindly. Margaret believed you would certainly manage the chain splendidly. And I share that conviction. The next day, local media widely reported the incident. Family betrayal over bakery chain inheritance, miraculous survival of mother and son abandoned on deserted island. While the headlines were sensational, the articles were largely factual. When preliminary hearings began, events moved quickly. Robert was the first to confess. He admitted to making poor judgments under his wife's strong influence and acknowledged that he had been troubled by his conscience until the end. Jennifer, I'm truly sorry, he apologized tearfully in court. I made the worst choice possible as a father. Meanwhile, Barbara maintained her defiant attitude until the end. I had legitimate rights, she insisted in court. That old woman ruined my life. Susan, along with her husband Tom, began negotiations with the prosecution for a plea deal. Her beautiful face had become haggard after several weeks in detention. Sis, please forgive me, Susan cried during questioning. We were all dancing to Mom's tune. The prosecution carefully built their case. They emphasized the high level of planning, attempted murder with intent, and above all, the inhumanity of involving an 8-year-old child. Lawyer Wilson continued to provide dedicated support as Jennifer's advisor. Perhaps Margaret foresaw something like this happening, he said. That's why she entrusted me with the role of guardian. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Evidence examination, witness testimony, and final arguments. The courtroom was filled daily with local residents and reporters. Finally, Judgment Day arrived. The judge delivered the verdict in a solemn voice. Defendant Barbara Miller, 7 years imprisonment. Defendant Robert Miller, 3 years imprisonment with 5 years probation. Defendants Susan Taylor and Tom Taylor, 2 years imprisonment each with 4 years probation. After the verdict, support grew even stronger. Encouraging letters arrived from local residents, and the media reported it as a triumph of justice. Many people were moved by the mother and son's courageous survival and their dignified attitude afterward. As she left the courthouse, Jennifer looked up at the sky. Heavy clouds were flowing, with light breaking through their gaps. Mom, did we win? Kevin asked as they walked hand in hand. Yes, Jennifer drew her son close. But our real victory starts now. Let's nurture the dream Grandma left for us together. That evening, Jennifer visited the main bakery store filled with her grandmother's memories. The scent of cinnamon in the air. Fresh baked bread lined up on display shelves. Pastries gleaming in glass cases. Everything welcomed her with the same warmth as 5 years ago. Grandma, Jennifer whispered quietly. I promise to live up to your faith in me. Outside the window, the setting sun gently colored the cityscape. One morning a year later. The aroma of bread wafted through the main store kitchen of Wilson's homemade bakery. Jennifer was by the window, checking recipes for new products. Sunlight caught her ring, casting small rainbows on the wall. Mom, the first batch of cinnamon rolls is ready. Kevin proudly held up a tray fresh from the oven. Now 9 years old, he had become his mother's trusted confidant and partner. Every day after school, he would stop by the bakery, finish his homework, and then help in the kitchen. The dexterity he developed through crafts was now put to good use in making delicate pastries. Perfect, Jennifer gently stroked her son's head. You've inherited Grandma's flavor. Over the past year, Wilson's homemade bakery had grown significantly. While maintaining traditional flavors and incorporating new ideas, the chain had expanded from 15 to 23 stores. But what made Jennifer most proud was building trust with her employees. "Ma'am, the interviewer has arrived," Sarah, a staff member, called out. It was an interview for a local business magazine's Successful Women Entrepreneurs feature. As she left the kitchen, she saw a familiar face. "It's been a while, Jennifer." Her father Robert stood there, looking slightly nervous. On probation, he had earnestly participated in rehabilitation programs over the past year. They had begun exchanging letters 2 months ago. "Dad." Jennifer returned his smile, though with some hesitation. "Could I see Kevin?" His voice trembled. "Of course, only if you'll allow it." Jennifer thought for a moment, then called her son. Kevin was initially cautious as he looked at his grandfather's face, but when Robert presented him with a handmade wooden craft kit, he gradually began to open up. "Did you make this for me?" "Yes," Robert looked straight into his grandson's eyes. "I learned carpentry in the prison rehabilitation program. I heard you like crafts." Since that day, Robert began visiting the store regularly. While atoning for his mistakes, he was slowly trying to rebuild bonds with his family. Barbara continued serving her sentence in prison. Several letters requesting visits had arrived, but Jennifer wasn't emotionally ready yet. However, her most recent letter contained, for the first time, words of sincere apology. Susan divorced her husband while on probation. She spent her days reflecting on herself through community service activities. Last week, she sent word that she had opened a small cafe. "This time, I want to build something with my own power," she wrote. "Jennifer, your business acumen is remarkable," said the visiting reporter, clearly impressed. "Moreover, this bakery has a wonderful warmth to it. It's as if the whole family is building it together." "Yes," Jennifer smiled. "We have wonderful employees. They're all like family to us." After the interview, she began preparing for the children's bakery class held at the nearby church. This was one of Jennifer's new initiatives. She wanted to create a place where children could learn the joy of baking while discussing family bonds. "Mom, everything's ready," Kevin reported happily. "Today, I'm going to teach everyone craft tips." At dusk, after closing the store, mother and son sat at the counter drinking special hot chocolate. Outside the window, the summer sunset gently illuminated the street. "Hey, Kevin," Jennifer asked her son. "Do you think we've found happiness?" "Yes," Kevin answered without hesitation. "Because I'm with you, Mom. And we've got new family members too, like Dad." Yes, 6 months ago, Jennifer had begun dating Michael, a pediatrician she met at the bakery class. The kind and sincere man was also a good friend to Kevin. "Mom," Kevin said with a serious expression. "Remember that time on the island? We worked hard together." "Yes," Jennifer hugged her son. "I got through it because you were with me then. And now too, I can move forward because you're here." The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the store. On the counter lay cinnamon rolls that Kevin had baked that morning. Her grandmother's recipe, now layered with new memories. Tomorrow, another day would begin from this place. The story of mother and son, who found hope for the future while carrying the pain of the past, would continue toward even greater happiness.